A man is running. Dawn light. Open grassland. No weapon. No food. No water that matters. In his fist, a short cord knotted at uneven lengths. Behind his eyes, a string of words he has repeated so many times they have stopped sounding like words at all. He is not hunting. He is not running from anything. He is the message. A day's run ahead, a group of people is waiting for something only he can bring. A warning, maybe. A death. A place to meet before the rains close the valley. We do not know. But he knows. And here is the terrifying part. He is the only copy. There is no letter folded in his pack, no file, no backup. If a predator finds him in the tall grass, the message dies with him. If he trips and cracks his skull on a rock, the message dies with him. If he simply forgets one wrong word, the warning becomes nonsense, and people he has never met may pay for it. Before writing, before paper, before phones, before the internet, before any machine on Earth could hold a thought for us, a single question hung over every human life. How do you make a message survive distance, danger, and death? We think we know the answer. We think there wasn't one. We picture the deep past as a kind of silence. Little bands of people huddled around fires, each group sealed off from the next, shouting only to whoever stood beside them. No way to send news. No way to warn. No way to reach across the dark. That picture feels obvious. It is also wrong. If quiet, ancient mysteries like this stay with you, consider subscribing. Because long before the first written symbol, humans had already cracked the distance problem. Not perfectly, not quickly, but well enough to coordinate hunts across miles, warn distant camps of danger, mark safe paths to water, and carry hard-won knowledge across generations who would never meet. They did it with no device we would call technology. They built something else instead. A network made entirely of people. Their voices, their bodies, their fires, their marks, their memory. The first internet was alive, and to understand it, we follow the runner. But first, we start with the oldest signal of all, sound. The human voice carries farther than you'd think. But the real breakthrough wasn't the voice. It was learning to make a sound that beats the voice. A shout dies in 20 steps of thick forest. A sharp whistle slices straight through it. A knock against a hollow log travels where words can't. Low rhythm in the right landscape can roll across distances a scream could never reach. And this isn't a guess. On the island of La Gomera, in the Canary Islands, people still speak a whistled language called Silbo Gomero. It turns spoken words into piercing whistles that carry across deep ravines for miles, far past the range of any shout. It is real, it works, and it survived into the modern world. Similar whistled and drummed systems appear independently in mountains and dense forests across the globe, each one shaped by the land that demanded it. We can't recover the exact sounds ancient people made. Sound leaves no fossil. But when the same solution is invented again and again, wherever the landscape swallows the human voice, it is reasonable to think the instinct is very old. Now picture why it mattered. A band spread thin across a hillside, gathering roots too far apart to hear a normal voice. A shape appears at the tree line. One sharp, agreed-upon whistle, and everyone freezes at once, or gathers, or runs for high ground. No words, just a sound everyone had been trained to obey. That isn't decoration. That's the difference between a group that loses someone and a group that loses no one. But sound had one fatal weakness. It vanishes the instant it's made. You can't store a whistle. You can't send a drumbeat into next week. So humans did something stranger, something we have almost completely forgotten how to do. They turned themselves into the storage. Go back to the runner. He didn't invent his journey. Someone trained him. Before he left, an elder walked him through the message again and again, fixing every word, because one wrong word could flip a warning into a lie. In a world without writing, the only place to keep important information was inside a human being. So humans became astonishingly good at it. Memory wasn't a private skill, it was public infrastructure, and here is where it gets strange. Anthropologists studying oral cultures have found that knowledge passed down through strict repetition and ritual can survive with startling accuracy across enormous spans of time. The most striking case comes from Aboriginal Australia, where researchers have documented oral traditions that appear to describe coastlines as they were before the seas rose at the end of the last ice age, land that has been underwater for thousands of years. We have to be careful. This is interpretation, not a recording. You can't timestamp a story. But the geography in these accounts matches real ancient shorelines in a way that is very hard to dismiss as coincidence. And that points to something extraordinary. Disciplined human memory, treated as a sacred duty, may carry true information across hundreds of generations. Think about what that meant just to stay alive. A child learning which plant heals and which plant kills wasn't reading a label. There was no pharmacy, no warning printed on a bottle. The knowledge lived only in an older person's words. Get it wrong. And the correction sometimes came as death. So getting the message right wasn't politeness. It was survival. And this is the part most people miss. The reason so much ancient knowledge came wrapped in song and chant wasn't only beauty. Rhythm is one of the most powerful memory tools ever discovered. Set a fact to a beat, lock the words in order, repeat the pattern, and it becomes far harder to lose. When you have no paper, you protect your most precious knowledge by turning it into a song. The first hard drive was not metal, it was a song. But a living memory has a flaw it can never escape. The body that holds it will die. To send a message to someone who wasn't there yet, to a person not even born, humans needed something that stayed behind. Here is where the story becomes physical. Something we can actually hold in our hands. In Blombos Cave, on the southern coast of South Africa, archaeologists found pieces of red ochre engraved with deliberate, cross-hatched lines. They are roughly 73,000 years old. Let that number land. Tens of thousands of years before the first true writing, a human being sat down and carved an organized, repeating pattern on purpose. We don't know what it meant. And honesty matters here. That engraving does not tell us its message, but it tells us something just as important. Humans were already making marks built to outlast the moment. Marks made to be looked at again. The same haunting pattern shows up elsewhere. The Lebombo bone, from the mountains between South Africa and Eswatini, carries a row of carefully cut notches and may be among the oldest tally objects we've ever found. The famous Ishango bone from Central Africa holds neat columns of marks that researchers have argued about for decades. A calendar, a count, a number system? We genuinely can't be sure, but the debate hides the real point. To argue whether something is a count, you must first agree that it is information organized and stored outside the human head. And the moment a mark is repeated on purpose, it stops being random. It becomes memory you can carry, memory that survives the person who made it. Now look again at the cord in the runner's hand. And know this is not pure imagination. In the Andes, civilizations used knotted cords called quipu to record numbers and information, sometimes whole accounts with no alphabet at all. A cord understands nothing, but its knots let a tired, frightened man check the words in his head against something solid. Two copies of the truth in two different forms, each one guarding the other. That's not luck. That's engineering. It's the same instinct that makes you say a phone number out loud while you type it, trusting neither your memory nor your thumbs completely. We back up what we cannot afford to lose. That instinct is ancient, but voice fades, and runners are slow. What if you needed to warn someone now, across a valley too wide to cross? For that, ancient humans had fire. A voice can't reach the far ridge. A carved bone can't shout that danger is coming tonight, but a column of smoke against a still sky can be seen for miles, and it can be seen instantly. We have to be clear. There is no prehistoric manual for smoke signals, and we won't pretend there is. Fire as a signaling code is a reasonable inference, not a proven fact. But what we know is solid. Humans have controlled fire for an immense span of time, almost certainly hundreds of thousands of years. Every camp had it, every night for warmth and protection. And a people who lit fires every night would not need a genius to notice the simplest thing in the world. Their neighbors could see the glow. The leap from making fire to making fire means something is a tiny one. And humans are very good at tiny leaps that change everything. And one of those leaps could travel faster than any runner. A relay. One fire seen by a distant camp, who light their own, seen by a camp beyond. A warning leaping ridge to ridge at the speed of sight. We can't prove ancient people built such chains, but the logic is so simple it would be stranger if no one ever did. A message that moves as fast as you can notice it is a message that can outrun the danger it carries. So return to the runner one more time, because by now he looks different. He isn't just a man crossing grassland, he's one moving part in a machine made of people. He carries memory, the words. He carries a marked object, the cord. And the camp that sent him may have lit a signal fire just to say a runner is coming, so someone would be watching the horizon instead of missing him in the dark. No single channel was strong enough alone. Layered together, they became a network. Fragile, slow, human, and real. But there was one more channel, and it may be the oldest of all. The landscape itself. A branch bent in a chosen direction. A small stack of stones beside a trail. A scratch on a tree at exactly eye height. To a stranger, invisible. To someone who knew the code. A sentence. This way to water. Danger ahead. Someone passed here, turn back. And we know ancient groups were not isolated because the proof traveled with them. Archaeologists can chemically fingerprint obsidian, a volcanic glass, and trace each blade back to the exact volcano it came from. Using that method, they've shown obsidian moving across hundreds of miles of the ancient Mediterranean and the Near East, passing from hand to hand long before cities existed. Seashells turn up deep inland, far from any coast. Pigments travel too. Those objects are not just trade. A trade good is a message that information moved. Every blade carried far from its volcano is proof of contact, of relationships, of open channels between distant peoples. Things moved, which means news moved with them. And then there was tracking. A skilled hunter could read a faint print in the dust and recover a whole story. What animal passed? How heavy? How fast? How long ago? That hunter was receiving a message from the past, written by a creature already gone. The same skill let a person leave a sign for someone arriving days later. A footprint is a message from the past. Communication across not just space, but time. No voice, no writing, just the world. Read like a page. And underneath all of it runs one feeling. The same one we still carry. The fear of not knowing. A hunting party leaves at dawn and doesn't come back by dark. Someone walks toward the next valley, and the silence stretches into days. That silence was unbearable. And it was deadly, because a group that couldn't coordinate couldn't survive. So every signal they ever built, the whistle, the smoke, the stones, the runner, was an answer to one human need. To break the silence. To say across a gap too wide for any voice. I am here, you are not alone, this is what you need to know. Now watch the runner finish. He reaches the far camp as the light dies. He is shaking with exhaustion. People gather, and he does not blurt out his news. He steadies his breath, he lifts the knotted cord, and he speaks the message in the exact shape he was taught, touching each knot as he goes, letting the object hold his place. No one interrupts. They aren't only listening, they are recording him, burning the words into their own minds so the message can outlive this one tired body. When he finishes, the message lives in more people than before. It has survived the distance. It has survived him. That was the entire point. So the silence we imagined was never real. Ancient humans weren't waiting helplessly for writing to set them free. They had already built communication from the only materials they had: their voices, their fires, their marks, and above all, their memory. Their methods were slower than ours, more fragile in 100 ways, but in one way, they were tougher than anything we own. A message held in 100 trained minds, sung in rhythm across generations, cannot be wiped by a dead battery, a cracked screen, or a server quietly going dark. It needs no power, It needs only people who care enough to remember. And maybe that's the part worth sitting with. We've handed our memory to machines. Every fact, every face, every number lives in a device in our pocket. And our own memory has gone soft because we no longer have to carry anything. The runner couldn't afford that. For him, forgetting wasn't an inconvenience. It was the message dying. He lived in a world where every important thing had to be carried by a living person who chose to hold it. And across all the distance between his time and ours, maybe that's the signal he's still sending. That before any technology existed, the most powerful thing humans ever built to reach each other was not a tool. It was the refusal to forget.